For those who don't know me, I work as a research director here in this university. And I'm also the convener, which means it's a standardese language. It means chairman of a standardization working group in Europe called Technology and Applications in Health Informatics. I'm sometimes the national representative of Finland in the meetings of the standardization committees. The SEN is the European, and ISO is, as you know, the global standardization committee. And I'm also participating in a couple of other standardization groups, which are related to this convenership in Europe, so that I know what's happening in the world and in other committees nearby. This presentation is based on this course, which I give in January and February every year, Standards, Interoperability and Regulations in Health Informatics. The course is intended for master's students and graduate students heading for the doctoral degree. So just because there are so many teachers here in this group, I'm just telling how I organize this. I have one live lecture in the beginning to introduce myself and the course, and then I have recorded lectures, and they are many, and the students are supposed to view those lectures. Then we have 7 exercises in small groups. This year they were in Zoom. Maybe they are going to be live in January and February next year. Then we have an exam after the course, 1 right after the course and 2 later on if you don't pass the first one. There are also alternative study methods. You can watch the videos offline at your own time. You can study the material that I've collected to Moodle, and then you can return the answers to these exercises in writing by email to you. Then you're supposed to provide a mind map of the contents of the course to get the whole picture. And instead of an exam, you can provide a 25-page summary of the course. And this is the main contents of the course. When we are talking about health informatics and medical devices, it is a regulated world. And that's why it's not sufficient just to know some standards, but you have to know also the regulations. So in this presentation, I'm going to give you just a glimpse of the national laws, and then the new European Information Society legislation coming from the European Commission and the European Parliament, then medical device regulation concerning software, and then a slide about accessibility regulation. Welcome. Morning. I hope you find a seat. This is the more popular event than the yesterday's event. Then I'll explain standards for manufacturing of health software, some interoperability standards, a glimpse to information society, and then a couple of other topics. There are many different topics as you will see. In Finland, of course, the Finnish Parliament makes laws, and that gives the framework of operations in health information technology also. The present government has passed a number of new laws. It's not their merit. They have been under preparation for many years already before, but they just happen to have been passed recently. And in addition to the laws, which are on a higher level, there are lower level regulations which give the details, and they are given by the Institute of Health and Welfare. I just could pick one of them. These are in Finnish, of course. There's a regulation 4 of 2021.
Okay. Sorry, Alpo, we are not sharing.
Oh,
The slides.
We are actually screen sharing, but it looks like this once again this problem with the PowerPoint screen sharing. So what's happening now? What's being shared now?
Just see.
Camera view. Okay.
It may take a few seconds, but you share.
Let's. What about now? What is being shared currently?
I see the PowerPoint in this computer. But it's not, of course, in the presentation.
Yeah. Mine.
Yep.
But you can see camera above the slide. You see how many you can see.
Well, here I can see the slides. See this. Share. It's funny. If some people can see it, but not.
What about if somebody else? Well, Alpha can see, and he's in the same conference. Can
But on the screen you can see like how many instead of slides.
yeah, but I'm sharing screen. You are screen sharing the whole screen currently. Can somebody else test this?
And the forward.
What happens, by the way, if I put this to screen sharing, this slideshow mode? Because yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, yeah. So everybody seems to see it except.
I see the presentation mode.
Yeah, presentation mode. I thought it's okay for sharing because it's better for bigger audience here, and people can then see this.
Yeah, but it could be a larger picture, maybe.
I don't know if it can be made larger in this, but we can also do it like this, that we share it here and minimize this, and then we get as much big picture as we can, and it's better for the. But it's not much bigger than the previous one.
Let's one more try. No.
Here. Then there is the
Application.
differential. So today.
Yeah, no. Let's
It's okay. I think now it's okay.
A way to have it a little like this to hide this one.
Yeah. How do you do that?
it's there behind this.
Press this F7 again. Disappears, I hope. No. Doesn't.
On the bottom.
Yeah, let's put this vision. let's not try too much here. If you yes, fine. Okay.
The way it was.
Yeah, but we need to get that out now.
Yeah. Now we have it out.
Sorry for the hassle here. It was a joint cooperative hassle.
Yeah. Right. So it's so much visit it would be larger because font is so small. So I mentioned this 421 about it is a regulation about the classification of health information systems and about the certification. So the law says that this kind of a thing has to be implemented, and then the regulation below says how it is done. So that's about Finland then. Then we go to the new European Information Society legislation. The Commission has been preparing these for many years, and when Commission has finished its preparation, it's taken to the European Parliament, who finally decides, and the contents are kind of frozen in the European Parliament. So we have the Digital Services Act just approved in July this year. It applies only to a small amount of health information systems. Then directive on measures for a high common level of cybersecurity across the Union, the NIS2 directive, and that applies to many healthcare organizations. And there you have to, when you make the hospital information systems for them, you have to apply this directive. Then there's a proposal for regulation of the European Parliament and the Council on the European health data space. And this is mostly about the secondary use of health data. So the idea behind is that it would be easier for companies to get access to large amounts of health data for secondary use, for training their AI models, etc. So this is a very large simplification of the many hundred pages of documents. Then there is this proposed Artificial Intelligence Act, Data Governance Act proposal, and the Data Act proposal. And you always have to check to what extent this applies to health information systems. And then there's the final one, the proposal for on the resilience of critical entities. And hospitals are critical entities, and their information systems belong to the essential ways of operating health care. So that applies to some extent also. It's related to the cybersecurity, which is supposed to provide the availability of the information systems in all conditions. Then there's some older legislation. There's this so-called cross-border healthcare directive, which should make it easier for patients to get healthcare in other EU member states. And the Commission is working towards the easier movability of health records from one EU country to another. Then there's, of course, the General Data Protection Regulation, which has been already in effect a few years. Then the Medical Device Regulation for regular medical devices and in vitro medical devices. And finally, the Act on Provision of Digital Services implementing the EU Web Accessibility Directive. So you have to make the public web pages provided by healthcare organizations accessible to people with disabilities. Right. Yep. Here we come to the General Data Protection Regulation, and Article 5 is perhaps the most important. It gives the principles related to processing of personal data. So it's about the data minimization, accuracy of the data, etc. Only in lawful, you can only process data in lawful ways. And then the controller of the data has to be able to demonstrate that they are fulfilling the requirements of this regulation.
Was able to increase.
Yeah. Thank you. That's good. And if you're a company and you want to export to the United States, you face another set of regulations. You have to obey the American laws and regulations given by the FDA. Here's an example about cybersecurity of medical devices. You need to take this into account when you file your product to the inspection, so that you might get a sell permit to the product. And in Europe, we have the medical device regulation. This is the definition of the medical device. And it's a very important paragraph in this regulation, because it defines whether your software product is a medical device or not. So if at least one of these things apply to your product, for example, you have a software which is monitoring health of patients, it is belonging to this medical device regulation. Or if you make a prognosis of the development of a cancer or development of a sepsis in patients, you are within the regulation, although your product is only software. So it says here, software, that it can be just a software can be a medical device. So, and they have clarified this in point 19. Software in its own right, when it's intended by the manufacturer to be used for a medical purpose. A general purpose software, for example, Microsoft Word, even if you type in patient information there, it is not a medical device. Then this regulation refers to harmonized standards. They are standards which are published in the official journal of the European Union, and they mean that if you follow these standards, you fulfill the requirements of the regulation in the area that this standard covers. And there are, for example, mentions like quality management systems and risk management, and there are standards for those purposes. Then just one slide about the web accessibility directive. This came a little bit by surprise to many organizations, and they still do not fully obey that regulation. And here's an example of a harmonized standard. The regulation says certain things, and here is the harmonized standard published in the official journal that EN 301-509 fulfills. If you fulfill this standard, you fulfill the requirements. Yep.
Just a short question. And just because I'm not aware if there is a specific regulation. There's a regulation for web, but not for apps, right? Apps
This is the same. The same is for apps.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm focusing here on this web pages. Yeah.
Okay. I've seen for the apps.
Yeah.
Many guidelines, not regulation.
Yeah. It is the same. It is the same, but for the brevity of expression, I do not say everything. By the way, after this presentation, everybody of you can say that, okay, but you didn't mention that and that at all. That's true. I cannot handle everything in a 30-minute presentation of this large area.
Thank you.
Yep, there are many organizations which make standards for health information systems. The ISO TC 215 is the global committee. 210 is for quality systems. Then HL7, DIHeco, IEEE, IHE, IEC, the European one, Continua, and others. So this has been quite a learning experience for me during the kind of lecturing of this course, because almost every year I find a new group of people making standards for this area. Yep. Here are the relationships of these organizations. The global one I put in the center, and the other groups often feed them, this organization, with standards, but not all of their standards, so that they become global ones. Then the European ones are sometimes also brought to ISO, or vice versa, the ISO standard is approved in Europe as a European standard. The standards can be proposed by national standardization bodies, both to ISO and Europe, and then the European Commission can make standardization requests to the European body that please make a standard for this purpose. Now, here we have the artificial intelligence organizations. This is the global one, SE42AI, and we have a European one corresponding there. And we have just seen this summer draft standardization request from the European Commission to this organ. Here's a slide from Ed Hammond in Duke, United States, about what areas you can standardize in health informatics. Because I'm already a little bit late, I skipped the detailed explanation of this. So here I classify standards to two areas: standards related to regulations, and then other standards often related to interoperability. This is the first regulatory related standard. It's about UDI. Even if you have a software medical device, you need an UDI for that. and it appears as this kind of a long code and often with a barcode like this. Then the medical device regulation says briefly that software shall be developed and manufactured in accordance with the state of the art. So the fine engineering methods, taking into account the principles of development lifecycle, risk management, including information security, verification, and validation. So they say that you have to have risk management, but they don't specify how do you do that. And for that, you need these harmonized standards. This is a list of those standards that apply to medical device software production. Those with the bold here are the ones that I've been involved in preparation to some extent. So the regulation mentions life cycle processes. So there's a standard for that. There's a standard for quality systems. This alone, as I have been told by Hannu, requires more than 100 documents from a company to implement. So you can imagine the burden to manufacturers what these things cause. And then this is for cybersecurity. And I didn't mention the risk management standard, which is also very important here.
I'm sorry, so if you want to go from a wellness device to medical device,
Yeah.
you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, software.
Now jumping away from the regulatory standards to other health informatics standards, this is a good one. We actually use it in our course, requirements for an electronic health record architecture, because it lists a lot of important requirements so that the students, after having read this, understand what a kind of electronic health record system can contain. Then jumping to HL7. HL7 standards are used also in Finland and in over 90% of the health information systems in the United States. They have version 3, which is this kind of contains this reference information model. It's very complicated. There are only few people who fully understand it. And that's why this version 3 of HL7 hasn't quite made it. And they stopped maintaining this model, which is a pity because it's been used in other standards also. This is the kind of workhorse HL7 standard, the version 2 messages. For example, here's a message from a laboratory to a central electronic health record system. Here's the same message in HL7 version 3, just the beginning of it, I suppose. And then the newest development is so-called FHIR, F-H-I-R. And this is being adopted by many industries because it is easy to understand and easy to implement. So that's going to be the future of HL7 standards. Then when we're talking about these little devices, there are two subdomains. First, from the gadget to a hub like a mobile phone, and then the standards that convey the information from the mobile phone to the kind of electronic health record system. And they are different ones for these purposes. Okay, I should have blinded that. And these standards are prepared by the IEEE Committee 11073. For the personal health devices, there's a series of these and maintained by this PhD group. They meet every Thursday from 5 to 6 Finnish time. I usually join that also, maybe not today. And then
Very nice figure over the system. Device.
Yeah, it's not by me. It's well. So there's a standard for communicating data at the lower level, this wireless body sensor network in the 802 series of IEEE standards. Then another multi-hop wireless backbone network standard, so 802.11. And then we have reached the home healthcare gateway, and we need different standards because you don't typically transfer all the data coming from the device to the medical records. So there's a transition there. And then the client accesses the data from this medical record database.
Can I please just
Yep.
because yesterday we were talking about Internet of Things. This is the clear paradigm of Internet of Things. There is a device measuring something, an edge bridging, so handling these different devices, and the cloud. So it's device edge cloud. It's kind of message of what Internet of Things is. It's Internet of Medical Things. So thank you, sorry.
But you're saying that the wearable sensor transmits more data than is captured by the medical recording, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what happens to the rest of the data?
It is typically ignored.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we call that noise, or it's like there's a reason?
It's not noise, but typically you don't store every kind of curve that you record from the patient. You just, for example, if it's a kind of a heart rate monitor, you might get the ECG up to here, and then they calculate the heart rate and just send the heart rate value forward. Right. Then for the medical devices in acute care and kind of in the high-end devices, there's a different family of standards, the classic series. And now there's a new generation under development, but it's not fully ready, so you cannot use it until certain important parts are ready. Then for medical imaging systems, like computer tomography, MRI, etc., there's a different committee doing standards. It's the DIHeco committee. Their standard is also an ISO standard nowadays. And it's in many parts, from 1 to 22. And one of them here, maybe it's the longest one, has over 1,400 pages. Imagine you would have to implement the standards. What the work would it be? Right. Then you need terminologies when you convey information from in healthcare. For example, for classification of diseases, you don't write the name of the disease, but the code. And there are also other coding needs. So there's ICD-10 mentioned there. I should update the ICD-11 is already in existence. And then there's the very important called SNOMED CT. It has a history from the 60s. Then you need for billing, you need current procedural terminology. So what procedures were done to the patients so that you can charge money for that. That was the original purpose for that. But it has been used in other ways also. And then when you record signals, here you also don't put the name of the signal like ECG or EMG, etc., but use the codes of those signals so that you can identify them uniquely without language difficulties. Right. So SNOMED has 350,000 concepts. So you can pick many from a large database. We have decided to adopt that, but we are in a transition period from the old Finloink codes into the SNOMED codes. This can take a long time because you still have to support the old data from, let's say, 5 years ago of the patients. Right. Right. Then another set family of standards here, the identification standards and identification of medicinal products made in ISO, but adopted by the European Medicines Agency. Right. This one I was going to skip because I'm only mentioning one security standard in health informatics, the 27799. It's about information security management using the general standard 27002. So there are some specific issues that you need to take into account when you're operating the healthcare environment, and this standard complements the general standards with the healthcare specific things. Right, and then there's a management type of standard. It defines the roles of people working in healthcare. And once you have defined the roles, you can assign access rights to different roles of different people in the organization. For example, a physician has a different access rights to those of a nurse of the same patient's data. Right. This organization integrating the healthcare enterprise works in such a way that it notices that other organizations have done standards in this area, but they are too extensive. We just take profiles for a certain limited purpose, and we leave out the non-important parts and just make this little profile so that it is easier to implement. And if all parties implement this profile, it's easier to communicate, and you get the things working faster. They have profiles for different areas like cardiology, dental, pharmacy, etc. And they have frameworks also for several areas of medicine. Right, this you shouldn't have seen at all. Then recent activity. So in this European Committee of Health Informatics, we have two working groups, enterprise and information for larger electronic health record systems, and the technology and applications area, where I'm now the chairman. We all follow what's happening in this ISO Global Health Informatics Committee. Those green stars are the groups that I try to follow actively. It's getting more and more difficult because the number of little ad hoc groups and working groups is increasing. And if they all meet at the same time, you can only be in one place at the one time and follow the other one from the net. So, but not three anymore.
So what is happening with personalized medical health, personalized digital health?
I'll show one of the standards that is under preparation in that group, so you can get some of an idea. Then this is a very popular recent product, technical specification about health and wellness apps, quality and reliability. So it has a number of questions to the manufacturer of a health app, and when they answer, they get points from the responses, and then you have a scale from green to red about the quality of the software. This is something that we have done first in Europe, the standard communication protocol for ECG, and once prepared in Europe, we brought it to the ISO level to become a global standard. There has been a vote about it. Actually, it's still going on in ISO at the moment. We'll see how it happens. Then this is also a rather interesting recent activity. It's a technical report about digital therapeutics software systems. So what regulations and guidelines for these products exist at the moment, then we may go forward in standardizing these kind of publicly available specifications, which are not yet global standards. Then there's activity about reducing clinicians' burden, because using those large systems can be complicated and not optimal. And this group tries to find ways of simplifying the use for the clinicians.
How do you define personalized
Here we have this document that is being kind of brought into preparation. It's the framework for the interoperability of transnational health records and services that are tailored for personalized digital health informatics. So typically, the data that is collected with these devices and managed by the patient himself or herself, and how you would incorporate that data into electronic health records. So common set of requirements, data item specification and concepts. One standard wouldn't solve all the problems here, but it's a start. Right. Then this is the extra special based on our yesterday's discussions, because we were talking about artificial intelligence, and certain things have been done already in the standardization committees, which you were still thinking that how it should be done. There are two actors, I would say, which are the most important. The global one is this subcommittee 42, and in Europe we have the Joint Technical Committee 21. And when I was preparing this part of the presentation, I was looking for a specific document in my folder, and I noticed that okay, I sort these files according to the year, and for this year I have already 1,053 documents from these two committees, including all the attendance lists, draft agendas, draft versions of the documents. So they produce quite a lot, and it's kind of a job to try to keep up and understand what's happening. Yep, going forward. So here are some of the already rightly available standards for artificial intelligence. This is not the complete list, but those that nicely fit into one slide. So if you're talking about big data, now there's an overview and vocabulary and a reference architecture in multiple parts. Then this is a very important document. It's this artificial intelligence concepts and terminology document, to which you got a link in yesterday's Zoom, because now everybody talks with the same terms about this. It has also been adopted to the European standards. Then there's a framework for this machine learning kind of systems that's already available. Then we were discussing a lot about bias yesterday, bias in AI systems and decision making. So it's a technical report. It doesn't, technical reports do not provide requirements for anybody. It's just information that exists. And if you want to specify requirements, you make a technical specification, so DS or ISO standard IS. Then overview of trustworthiness in artificial intelligence. So those issues have been discussed. Overview of ethical and societal concerns. And but many don't know about that, but there's a UNESCO agreement about the ethical issues in AI. You know it.
No, this is 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Then governance of AI systems.
I understand well, there is nothing about how to send or monitor your AI risk. How it's going.
Well,
If there is, what are the current AI
you were
risks?
asking for this standard. So artificial intelligence guidance on risk management. So
All those are published,
this is now some current work items that
nothing is published.
no. This page was the list of published standards, and it's not complete because they didn't fit all. Here's some work under preparation. When you get the slides, you notice that there's quite a lot of things going on at the moment.
Is that publicly available from the web address, for
Yes,
example?
yes, I have the address there so that you can go and see.
Those are, I see, quite recent, quite new ones. I
Yeah.
found the standard not published system of concepts to support continuity of care.
Yeah.
Healthcare process and workflow. And as far as I remember, it is 10 or more years ago it was started to think about. So what is how long the procedures is from the start up to publishing?
Often the process takes the 36 months that it's supposed to take at maximum. There are typically these voting rounds, which in which you have to give time for people to read and form a national opinion about the standard. And those things just take time.
Sorry, this standard is I found it not published, but it costs. You can buy. So what does it mean?
Well, there is a version about the consensus standard available, but it will probably being revised, and the new one is not yet ready. So that could be the condition. Yeah. Then there's this life cycle processes standards, and we were talking about the validity of this AI system. And now, if you fulfill kind of this standard, the life cycle processes, there's this continuation validation process that you have to follow, that your system maintains its validity even if you add new training data, etc. Then this European part, we are working on the conformity assessment technical report at the moment in working group 2. But this is important. This is next to the last one. So the European Commission has now issued a standardization request to the European Committee that please make these standards to support the European Artificial Intelligence Act. And they list the following: risk management, governance and quality of data sets, record keeping and logging functions, transparency and information to the users, human oversight of the AI systems. The list continues. Second page. Accuracy specifications, robustness specification, then cybersecurity, and quality management system, and finally conformity assessment for AI systems. And once these standards are in place, the deadline that they should be ready is in 2024. Then those AI systems which are in certain risk classes or above have to fulfill the requirements in practice of these standards. And then we would have come to the end of the presentation.